Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I'm going to run you through all of the key transfer tips ahead of Game Week 9. In the meantime, if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. For now though, let's crack on with it. Right then, so let's start off with one of the key talking points from the Sunday football. That is, of course, that Erling Haaland has blanked yet again. So that's 3 blanks in a row now. And considering today was meant to be on paper a pretty easy fixture against Wolves away from home, that is very disappointing. Now, what's even more disappointing is he didn't have any chances whatsoever. I think he had 0.01 XGI in the game. So absolutely no service and didn't really look in any way bothered during the match. Now, obviously, that's more of a subjective point, but it's not a good omen. It's definitely not a good sign. And 3 blanks in a row, obviously something that we need to discuss and need to take into account because that's a lot of money to be spending on a player, 15.4 million, if he's not getting returns. Now, I think the problem is with Haaland, it's pretty obvious. The fixtures to come are still pretty good, especially Game Week 9 at home to Southampton. We saw what Southampton did against Leicester. They absolutely crumbled yet again. And you just cannot imagine a universe where Man City don't put them to the sword in Game Week 9. If that is the case, even if they are struggling a little bit to find ways to create chances for Haaland, I just can't see a way that he doesn't have a good game against Southampton. And I'm a Southampton fan, for context, for any of you that didn't already know that. I would be shocked if he didn't have a good day at the office there. Now, I think after that, there's a wider discussion now as to whether or not Haaland is someone that you absolutely need to have in your team. And the 3 blanks in a row, in probably not the worst set of fixtures either, probably goes to show that you could take a bit of a gamble against him at times this season. And to be honest, I'm starting to plan for life without him come maybe Game Week 10, but probably more likely to be around Game Week 12, 13, and just have a little look at what I could do with the money if I was to take it out of Erling Haaland and put it elsewhere. Now, that's not locking me into that move, and obviously I will have to do a lot more thinking about that, because it's a big call to make to go without one of the most explosive assets in the game. Even though he's blanked 3 times in a row, the data is still phenomenal. He's still got 10 goals in 8 games, so he's still a fantastic player. But is he good value for money in the fixtures where you might not necessarily captain him, and those are coming? It's a 50-50 call for me at the moment, and it's something that I don't want to just rule out altogether. So I am having a look at what life could look like down the line without him. The question is, of course, would I be selling him now? This is a transfer tips video. No, I wouldn't be selling him now. Southampton are absolutely awful at the back. They'll start playing out from the back like usual. You'd think City will definitely get the better of them. And Erling Haaland, despite not necessarily being in the best form recently, if you believe in that sort of thing, you would still think that he comes good against Southampton. And I would be shocked if he didn't. If he doesn't, then I think we have another discussion this time next week as to whether or not he is just an instant sell. Because if that's 4 blanks in a row at 15.4 million and he's just blanked against Wolves and then Southampton, it's a whole different ball game. For now, though, I would hold tight. He will be my captain in Game Week 9, almost certainly, barring any sort of injury. But there's definitely something not quite right there, and City maybe aren't looking quite as fluid as they have done in the past when Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne are in the side. So definitely something to monitor. Game Week 9 for me is not the time to be selling him in particular, though. Okay, so from one premium asset to another, Mo Salah definitely did not disappoint in Game Week 8 against Chelsea. Goal and an assist. Look good as usual. Obviously, the penalty inflates the data a little bit, so that is a bit noisy. But he had a good game. Obviously, the assist for Jones was phenomenal. And overall, he was a constant threat. Now, I think with Mo Salah, the interesting thing is, when is the right time to be buying him if you don't already have him? I think if you've got him, you absolutely hold on to him now, because probably from an attacking point of view, 3 of the next 4 are looking pretty decent. And we'll come on to the Arsenal defence in just a moment's time. But obviously with Saliba suspended, and they haven't kept a clean sheet in a little while either, you'd still think that Liverpool have chances in that game, whilst objectively not an easy one. So I don't think you'd be selling him right now. I think a lot of managers, including myself, I probably would have sold him ahead of this run, given the other players at his price and below that are also putting up good data. But if you held the faith, if you kept him, then I think at this point in time, you're laughing. 10 attacking turns, goal and an assist against Chelsea, and he's about to embark on a pretty decent run, especially once Arsenal's out the way. Brighton and Villa both at home and Southampton away from home. It's a good little patch of fixtures before they go up against Man City. So overall, I wouldn't say he's an immediate buy right now. At 12.6 million, I don't think you need to rip up your teams to buy him ahead of Arsenal, even though that they've got their own little defensive problems. But if you've got him right now, you're laughing. And I think it's one thing to maybe not want to buy him this week. I would completely understand that. But game week 10, again, maybe just have in the back of your mind, or make the decision now as to whether or not you want a route to him by game week 10 for that little patch of fixtures. You might decide that you don't really want him for those three fixtures for Brighton, Villa and Southampton. That's absolutely fine. You could look at Brighton and Villa, although they are home games, and say, you know what, Liverpool have got some pretty tough Champions League fixtures in there as well. They might be a little bit slower in those games. That's fair. But you also might look at the 10-point-something million assets and say, you know what, I reckon they can take on Salah in those game weeks. And again, completely fair. But you might end up on the other side of the debate. And if you are thinking that game week 10, I want Mo Salah, it's just something that you want to plan for now rather than leave yourself with a bit of a hole in game week 10 to try and muddle through and rip up your team in 1 week to get to him. So I think right now, if I was to get to Mo Salah, it would be next week, and it probably would involve selling Erling Haaland to do so, and that's why I'm pretty on the fence about doing it. I don't think I'm currently planning on getting Mo Salah for this run, but another impressive performance against Arsenal, and I might just say, you know what, hands up, I was wrong. He's going to be much more important in my team than I first considered him to be, and perhaps he is 2 million better value than the likes of Palmer or Saka or even Son Heung-min as well. For the time being, I think that they can still take him on for the value that they're at, and I can use that extra money elsewhere, especially with Arsenal next up. But again, if he performs really well in that week, then I might have to change my attitude very quickly and look at a way to have him ahead of game week 10 and beyond. Right then, so a quick word on Bukayo Saka. Now, obviously missed out in game week 8 with a slight injury, we think, but he didn't even make the bench, so that is definitely a risk ahead of game week 9 as well. I think he'll probably be okay from what we know. I think even Carsley on England duty said that Saka probably could have just about played the second international match, so I don't think it's going to be a major thing. Maybe Arteta just didn't want to risk him in game week 8 against Bournemouth. If you've still got Saka, which obviously 32% of managers still do, so almost a third of the game, there's a big decision now to be made as to whether you just hold faith. I think if he is fit for game week 9, you could absolutely do that. Even though Liverpool isn't an easy fixture, it's at home. Arsenal are a great side. They can score goals against anyone. And then Newcastle and Chelsea, they can absolutely do well in as well. But it's not a great little patch of fixtures. And you could look at going somewhere else if you wanted to. There are definitely other players, some of which we'll talk about in the video today, that you could have a look at a short-term switch from Saka to, and then you could maybe look at bringing Saka back in later down the line. I think what's important here is knowing how many free transfers you've got and trying to map out in the future, if you were to sell Saka, when you would want him back and whether or not you're going to be able to do that easily or with maybe a little bit more considerable trouble in fitting in all of those free transfers. Now, I think the hopping on point for Saka, if you were to go without him for a little bit, would probably be game week 12. But if not game week 12, certainly by game week 13. They go on a really fantastic run after game week 11. Game week 12, on paper, looks great, but Forest are a good defence. So you may be able to push it that one extra week if you wanted to. Some of the players that you might look at bringing in for Saka, though, also have fixtures that are really decent up until game week 12 and then might want to switch it back to Saka at that point. So booking in free transfers down the line is always risky, but because we can roll more free transfers this year, it might be something that you're able to do. Like I said though, Saka is a phenomenal player, great underlying data, already 9 attacking returns so far this season. And you'd expect, if he is starting by game week 9, which I would be surprised if he wasn't at this point in time, he should still do well in those 3 fixtures. So it's not a definite must sell. It's just if you think you've got the free transfers and the easy way to get back to him later, you might want to take him on for just a few game weeks. That being said, fantastic player, and I do expect him to still score points as long as he's fit by game week 9. So just a brief word on Saliba and the Arsenal defence generally. Now, Saliba obviously suspended for the Liverpool game. A lot of managers might have been looking to bench him anyway because Liverpool is obviously a pretty difficult fixture to keep a clean sheet in. And I think if you've got good defensive cover on your bench, you could just play one of them this week, and Saliba could easily just sit on your bench and maybe not a must sell. For those of you who maybe don't have the same sort of bench cover, then obviously the decision is kind of made for you. You can look at selling him. There are a few good defenders out there at the moment. Gvardiol, for instance, got a couple good fixtures to come around the same price and obviously scored again in game week 8. So you could look at a pretty simple swap there. Now, whether or not you're a Saliba owner or maybe Gabriel or Raya in goal, you might equally just be questioning, is it worth owning Arsenal defensive assets at this point in time, considering they just haven't been keeping the clean sheets recently? And I think it depends, firstly, how many free transfers you've got, but also how long-term you want to set up your side for. The final thing it also depends on is whether or not you think that the Arsenal defence has significantly dropped off since last season, where they were inarguably the best in the league defensively by quite a margin. Do you think that something has fundamentally changed to make them a much worse defence this year? Now, my personal opinion, I don't think that's the case. I still think they're an elite defence, and overall, the numbers will start to reflect that over time. For now, though, it obviously hasn't looked good in quite a few weeks. You'd expect maybe 2 clean sheets in the last 3 game weeks against Southampton, Leicester and Bournemouth now. They've kept none. So double Arsenal defensive owners like myself will be feeling very hard done by, very frustrated by owning the likes of a double up of maybe Raya and Saliba or Raya and Gabriel. But I think they were pretty unlucky to concede against Southampton. Equally quite unlucky to concede twice against Leicester, and against Bournemouth they did have maybe 27 minutes of the match with 11 men before obviously the red card for Saliba. That changed quite a lot in terms of the match structure and the dynamic, so again maybe we shouldn't read too much into that. It is worth noting though that Arsenal have gotten quite a lot of red cards, so maybe that's something that we need to weigh into our thinking a little bit going forward as well. My personal opinion is, whilst frustrating, I still expect Arsenal to be a very good defence over a long period of time. And I don't have a ton of free transfers at the moment. And because my assumption is they will continue to be a good defence on average, I still think it's worth holding on to them for now. Now, you could look at taking a bit of a gamble and going against them. And again, that's absolutely fine. They are a lot of money, and you can look at cheaper options who are also putting up pretty good data. For now, though, I still think over a very long stretch, which I plan on owning them for, they will be the best defence in the league. And I am planning on holding on to both Gabriel, who obviously has a lot more goal threat than Saliba so far this season himself, and Raya, who equally I think is the best keeper to own in the game at the moment. A lot of money, though, so definitely not a must-own in either case. But I do still expect the Arsenal defence to come good over a long period of time. The next 3 weeks, though, are going to be maybe less likely to keep clean sheets, and you could take a quick look elsewhere and maybe gain some upside there for the next few game weeks. Right then, so if you are looking at selling Bukayo Saka, the obvious replacement is probably looking like Son Heung-min at this moment in time. 6 attacking returns, obviously injured until recently, came back, started the game against West Ham, got the goal, and the assist was, let's call it, a little bit fortunate, but still, they all count, apparently. And 3 goals, 3 assists so far this season. He's off to a pretty good start. I think in only 6 starts so far, 6 attacking returns, obviously very, very decent. And if you were looking at taking a 3 game week punt away from Bukayo Saka, or maybe you're looking at selling a Luis Diaz, for instance, and you've got a little bit money saved up, then Son Heung-min could be a really good pick for the next 3 game weeks. It's also worth noting you could hold on to him for a bit longer as well. They've got Fulham in game week 13, so it's a good run of fixtures. But I think in particular, if you're looking at that direct swap for Saka, the next 3 game weeks are better than what Arsenal have got. Crystal Palace, Villa and Ipswich, especially that Ipswich game, looks very, very decent for Spurs attacking assets, and they are putting up as a team very good XG data so far this season. In fact, I think it's the best in the league so far out of all 20 teams, and a large part of that was without 1 or 2 of their key men as well. So Son Heung-min coming back in obviously bolsters them, and you'd expect their data to become even better and with better fixtures as well. So I do think he's a good buy in game week 9. I don't think he's a must buy, because if Saka's fit, you could absolutely say that Saka is just the better asset, the better attacking data, and maybe you prefer to own him. But given the fixtures are slightly better, I do see this as an opportunity that maybe you could look at Son for a 3 game week period and then maybe swap back to someone like a Saka by game week 12 when Man City are up next for Spurs by that point. For the time being though, low owned, differential, good price point. He's dropped a couple of times now, and decent data, although obviously not phenomenal. But overall, I can't really fault having Son Heung-min as a pick for the next 3 as a bit of a differential with very high upside. So we've talked about one Spurs attacking asset. Let's talk about another, that being Dominic Solanke, who has been a bit frustrating, especially in the last 2 game weeks against Brighton and now West Ham. Obviously nothing in the West Ham game, and looked fairly anonymous throughout the entire match. There were moments where he got fairly close to chances, but never really got on the end of anything. And the same could have been said for the Brighton game as well. Obviously picked up the assist for Johnson, but that was almost the only thing he did in that match. Now, I picked him up on my game week 6 wildcard. The data at that point looked really positive, and there have been matches where absolutely everything lands at his feet. I think he got 4 key chances or big chances in the previous game week before I picked him up on the wild card. So there were moments for Solanke where I thought, you know what, he could be a bit of a game breaker at that point at 7.5 million. But in the last 2 weeks specifically, he's been dropping deeper, hasn't really been on the end of much, and has been, admittedly, quite frustrating as a player to own in FPL, and I am getting maybe slightly twitchy feet on him. I'm trying to remain balanced though. The data overall is still good, and whilst there are moments and matches where he's not so involved, there have also equally been matches this season where he's been very, very involved and got an incredible data. And I think over a long period of time, that will kind of balance out. There will be weeks where he gets plenty of key chances and other weeks where maybe he is starved of them a little bit. Spurs create a lot of XG, as I've already talked about in this video, and I do expect him to come good over the next few game weeks. Again, I don't think he's someone that you need to go out and buy this week in particular, but if you've got him, I have a feeling that you just hold firm for now. I certainly will be for this game week by the looks of it, unless there's some sort of injury rumour, of course. Nothing to be heard of so far. But Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, then Ipswich is still a good run of fixtures. I will probably look at selling him after that if he still hasn't come good. He has been frustrating, but the data overall is still decent, and I don't want to be impatient on these sort of picks. I want to take a step back, know that not every single one of my players is going to perform really, really well every week, and over a long run average, he will hopefully come good based on the quality of striker we know he is, in the team quality that we know Spurs have. They will create him a lot of chances. Over a long period of time, I do think he's still good value for money, and he will get me points. For now though, bit frustrating, and just one that I'm trying to stay fairly calm about. Now, if you were looking at making a striker switch this game week, then a player that will definitely be on your radar, and indeed mine, would be Raul Jimenez. Now, he's been absolutely phenomenal recently, to the point where I would have completely disregarded him 3 or 4 game weeks ago, because for quite a long period of time now, he just hasn't been the first choice striker at Fulham, and generally not that effective as a FPL pick. However, things seem to be changing. He's actually gotten an attacking return in each of his 5 last Premier League games, which is phenomenal. It is a undoubtedly very hot streak. And we saw this last season with Muniz as well at Fulham. strikers at Fulham just seem to go on these little runs where they just consistently get chances and score. And if you can pick the correct striker at the right time at Fulham, they're very well priced. They get good data when they go on these scoring runs. And Jimenez seems to be the guy at the moment that is on the end of all of the good things that Fulham are doing. The data looks absolutely fantastic. He's averaging 0.8 XGI per 90. And it's now at the point where I was very hesitant on him. I didn't want to recommend him for quite a while because I thought one bad game week and he's probably out of the side and Muniz gets another go. But he's been playing well for so long now that I think it would take a pretty big drop-off for him not to be that first-choice striker for Fulham. And with the fixtures to come, the next 5 look absolutely fantastic. So at 5.7 million, he doesn't even really need to be getting 90 minutes every single game to be good value for money. With the data he's got, he is playing so well that he is the first choice pick. And honestly, I have to kind of hold my hands up and say I was maybe a little bit too skeptical, and he has played himself into that starting 11 now. I think he's a good pick. 5.7 million, you can't really go wrong. And I've currently got Dominic Calvert-Lewin in my side, completely stinking up my team at 0.3 million more with worse data, not getting anywhere near the same amount of chances and just nowhere near the same sort of form level that Jimenez has. And although the fixtures look good for Calvert-Lewin, they look equally good for Jimenez as well. So if you are making a striker move this week and you're looking at the cheaper options, I think look no further than Raul Jimenez. I'd be very surprised if he comes out of the side anytime soon, which was my main hesitation, as you know. If he does look locked in, which seems to be the case, honestly, the fixtures are so good that I think he is a really good pick and someone that I'd definitely be looking at buying ahead of Game Week 9 and beyond. So I just wanted to wrap up this video with 5 other picks that I really like the look of. I just didn't want to spend half an hour talking about each of them in isolation. So quickly to summarise, Buonanotte at 5 million looks like an outlier good pick at the moment. 3 attacking returns in his last 3 game weeks, 5 overall across the season, great fixtures to come, and really good underlying data of over 0.5 XGI per 90. I think most people have been overlooking him and maybe underestimating him because of the price, but I think he is an outlier good pick and a very good differential with good fixtures to come. Garnacho as well has been going under the radar for me slightly, mainly because he just hasn't been getting the attacking returns, and now he scored the goal, maybe it put into focus that he was actually a better pick than I've been giving him credit for recently. I didn't think he'd been getting the minutes, but he's actually been getting 90 minutes now pretty consistently for quite a while, and the data also holds up really well. 0.49 XG per 90, that's not even including the assist threat, is very, very good for someone at just 6.2 million. And again, good fixtures to come. So don't overlook Garnacho just because of the badge on his shirt. He looks like a pretty good pickup at this point in time as well. And again, going massively under the radar. Now, Ollie Watkins is a player that we're all very well aware of the quality, but again, has maybe been not talked about enough recently. That's on me as well, as another person who makes YouTube videos. I should have maybe talked about him a little bit more. But 7 attacking returns, including 5 goals. The data looks good. And again, if you own him, you're laughing. If you don't own him, it's pretty tricky in most cases to get across to him. But he looks like a fantastic pickup. Even with the fixtures not looking the best over the next 5, you'd still expect him, of all people, to get good data, to get the chances. And even though he's a little bit more expensive than most of the other forwards, he's probably more reliable than also most of the other forwards too. So if you maybe just want that security, you know you've got yourself a good striker you can hold for a long period of time, regardless of the fixtures, Ollie Watkins always looks like a good pick. Looking down, the Wolves players, I think, also deserve a quick mention. They're coming into a great run of fixtures, arguably starting now, but I'd say more likely the best hopping on point is maybe next week in game week 10. They've got Brighton next up. After that, I think it's Crystal Palace. Don't quote me on that. But it's a good run of fixtures for a very, very long period of time after pretty much this point onwards. And both Ait-Nouri and Cunha would be good pickups. Now, Cunha came off early against Man City. I think that's more of a tactical thing. They're obviously trying to conserve the points in that game. Didn't quite pan out that way, but Cunha, moving forwards, I do think he's a quality player. very good striker and talismanic for Wolves. They've got great fixtures. He's at a decent price point. I like him. Same goes for Ait-Nouri. At times he even plays on the left wing. So high up for Wolves. Maybe not the case against Man City, but you maybe forgive them for that. Overall, again, great fixtures. They will keep the odd clean sheet. I think they've been very, very unfortunate with the fixture run they've had so far this season. Absolutely brutal, but it really turns green from now on. And if you have any faith in Wolves whatsoever, which I wouldn't say I necessarily have faith in them, but I think they're a much better team than they've been showing so far. At 4.4 million, Ait-Nouri could be another really good budget pickup. So overall, I really like these 5 picks as other options you could look at in Game Week 9 and beyond. As we reach the end of today's video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It would be greatly appreciated if you did. And I'll see you later on this week as we take a look at my team selection ahead of Game Week 9.